Hi everybody, this is the fourth calendar year of this channel and I wanted to cover my returns in dollar terms so far to show that you can have market beating returns investing in Türkiye. You just need to know what you are doing. A lot of people, when they hear about Türkiye, they just turn the page and move on to the next idea. But I am challenging you to take around 10 minutes of your time to broaden your horizons. I also want to point out that I have accounts in Charles Schwab and Interactive Brokers, so I too can invest in United States, Europe, Japan and other countries. But you need to remember the first rule of fishing. It is to fish where the fish are. I covered why I believe the US market is currently overpriced in my last CCI video, so I am not going to go back there again, and as always, this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. But before we look at the numbers, you need to understand how I invest. I am a disciple of the Charlie Munger school of thought. This strategy is boring but effective. Buy a few great companies and then just sit on your hands. This is why you haven't seen me cover a new stock every single week on this channel. I am not chasing trends, and I am not trading for clicks. I am buying businesses to hold for the long term. And I mean really hold. During the period I am about to show you, there were massive macro shocks. We saw days where these stocks had multiple limit down days, with circuit breakers triggered. But because I focused on the business fundamentals rather than the panic, I did the hardest thing in investing. I did nothing. I held on. So, what I am going to do here is to look at when I first released my videos about the companies that I still have in my portfolio, the ones I held through that volatility, and their returns. Trust me, you are going to like this. The first video of the channel is TAV Airports. As you can see here, I released the video on September 13th, 2022, around 3.5 years ago. It went from around $3.75 per share to $7.36 per share. So the total return in dollar terms is 96% and the CAGR is 22%. The second one is Coca-Cola İçecek. I released the video on November 25th, 2022. The stock went from 94 cents to $1.69. So the total return here is 80% and the CAGR is 20.5%. I actually bought more CCI during the last dip, almost doubling my position, which was quite nice. The third one is Reysaş. This one is logistics. Now, this one is more complicated. I originally invested in late 2021, but only started covering it on the channel in early 2023. But to keep it consistent, I am using the date from the first video. This is for logistics, and the release date is February 23rd, 2023. Now, I actually sold out of logistics to buy the REIT shares of Reysaş GEO, which performed better. But recently, I again sold out of the REIT shares to buy more logistics shares because this time I am expecting the logistics to do better. But again, for consistency, I am going to be using the logistics data here. The stock was at 19 cents and it is currently at 39 cents. So the total return is 105% while the CAGR is 28%. And this is crucial. Point out that with those trades I mentioned and not paying any tax on capital gains, I actually did much better than that number in Reysaş. Still, even if you did nothing, 28% CAGR is basically your path to financial freedom. On July 6, 2023, I finally made a video covering Reysaş GEO as well, Reysaş's REIT arm. At that day, the stock was at 14 cents and currently it is at 63 cents. So this is by far the best performing stock with a total return of 350% and a CAGR of 80% in the last 2.5 years. But not all have been successes like these four names. Here is the example of Anadolu Efes, the parent company of CCI. I released the video on March 2nd, 2024. The stock was at 45 cents per share and just in first 4 months it jumped to 87 cents per share. I had almost doubled my capital in 4 months. However, it then started to lose its momentum. We had a couple bad quarters there, and after Russia seized the Russian beer operations of Efes, which represented around 2/3 of the beer group, Efes went off a cliff and it is currently below the price it was when I first released the video, 41 cents per share. So the total return is negative 9% and the CAGR is negative 4.8%. Still, it is not a terrible investment, but it still remains in the loss section for me. I am still holding the stock. They own 50% of Coca-Cola İçecek and the market basically wrote off the beer business, so I expect Efes to follow where CCI goes, and it remains a smaller position in my portfolio with a 2.7% allocation for me. Now, I also invested and covered Doğuş Oto, and I actually made quite good returns from the company. However, my outlook on the company has changed. I didn't like their capital allocation progress, so I sold out, and therefore I am excluding it despite making great returns in the company. Finally, around a month ago, I released a video on a new Turkish company, Torunlar GEO, which I am also invested in, and it is up almost 10% since. But 1 month is not enough time for me to include it here, so I am excluding that one as well. So, We have these 5 names and their returns. I calculated a what-if scenario. I am using a round figure of $500,000 for this thought exercise. What I am showing here is there are 5 positions. If you divided the 100,000 equally and invested at the times that I covered earlier, what would be the portfolio today? Well, the 100,000 would have grown to over $224,000. That is a total return of 124%. And when we look at CAGR from the dates when the money is put to work, the CAGR is at a whopping 33.4%. Because each 20,000 goes in on a different date, this is a money-weighted CAGR, basically an IRR. That CAGR effectively means that you are doubling your capital every 2.5 years. And what's even better is I am not using any leverage. I am not buying options and I am not speculating on things that I cannot predict. This brings me to why I love this market. You don't need a PhD in biochemistry or a crystal ball for an AI adoption to understand how Reysaş rents a warehouse or how TAV Airports operates an airport. These are tangible, physical businesses. In my opinion, the risk in investing in these clear-cut business models is actually lower than chasing the current high flyers like Salesforce or Novo Nordisk. With those, you are betting on a complex innovation cycle. With TAV Airports, however, you are betting that people will keep flying. So I like my odds better. Now, a word of caution here. I want to be crystal clear. Do not look at Reysaş chart and expect another 5-bagger in the next 3 years. Well, could it happen? Yes. Is it likely? I am not so sure. The massive valuation gap that existed in 2021 has largely closed. These are no longer trading for pennies. They are still undervalued and they are still high-quality compounders. But it's not as good as it was in 2021. So you will have to settle for more than doubling the market rather than doubling your money every year. Even if they only compound at 20 to 25% from here, I expect that to absolutely crush the S&P 500. As I mentioned in my last CCI video, the US market is priced for perfection. We are likely looking at a lost decade for the S&P 500 with low single-digit returns as multiples compress. So the game for the next decade isn't about buying the index and going to sleep. It is about finding specific, mispriced value in markets the rest of the world is ignoring. Making money in the stock market is not going to be as easy in this coming decade as it was in the last two. And that brings me to Launch Investing Research Library. If you agree that easy money has been made, then you know that the next decade belongs to the stock pickers. But doing this level of research, digging through the Turkish footnotes, translating accounting noises, and building models takes hundreds of hours. This is exactly what I do on Patreon. Think of it as your outsourced research desk. You get immediate access to my core coverage of Reysaş, TAV Airports, and CCI, along with my monthly letters regarding what I am doing with my portfolio, and also deep dives on new ideas that I am working on. I do the grunt work, so you can just read the report and decide for yourself. If you are serious about treating your portfolio like a business, join us at the link in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.